How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Diamond Mount channel. If you're new to me, thank you very much for clicking on this video. I really hope you enjoy it. I'm Chris Bilton. I was a professional jeweller for over 20 years in the UK, but now I'm living in Japan and kind of unemployable as a jeweller because I don't speak Japanese well enough really to deal with customers. So putting my skills to good use by making jewellery making instructional videos for YouTube so I can share everything I've learned over the years with people who are teaching themselves or not able to go to lessons for any reason. So yeah, welcome. Why not click like and subscribe, help the channel grow and all that. So this video, I'm cheating a little bit because this video was taken out of a full instructional guide I made recently. I did a full instructional guide for a oval citrine, and then we had two tapered baguette stones as the shoulders. So it was a nice looking ring. Full instructional guide is only available for patrons of the channel, so there's a link in the description if you want to become a patron and check that out. That'd be great. If not, this video is from that, so you can get an idea of the amount of like in-depth instruction I go to when I'm teaching my full guides. Okay, so we've got this oval citrine, a little bit of a weird stone. It's like half the stone's clear, half it's got colour in, this half is clear, so it's got a weird sort of effect to it. Yeah, not an expensive stone. I bought it literally for practicing mounting new designs and stuff, so citrines are good for that. They're not actually bad looking stones. You can finish a piece of jewellery with them. They're not overly expensive to buy. So this citrine, I can remember buying this in London. I bought it from a trade gem dealer called Marcus McCullum in Hatton Garden, and I remember like he left all his citrines with me, and because I said I wanted a large-ish one, didn't really know, so he just let me sort out what I wanted, then I was going to ask him the price after. And when he came back to the desk, like I had found this one and another one which was bigger and a really special colour. It was like citrine colour, but had a sort of peachy orangeness to it. It was really nice. And he looked at it and looked a bit confused, and then like got his loop out, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, I don't think that was supposed to be in there." I actually think it was like some sort of rare peach sapphire or something. Got mixed up in the wrong place. So yeah, he took that away. I didn't get to buy that one, unfortunately. But this one is a good stone for practicing mounting. And let me show you. I'm just laying them out on the bench. I just talk about what I initially thinking as I'm imagining making it, seeing them together. So yeah, that's a really long spread, like across a woman with a skinny finger. It's going to go right across if you lay them flat, so that's a silly thing to consider doing it. So we're going to make it, as that stone's nice and deep, we can have the stone in the centre obviously, and then these, rather than being flat and sticking out miles, I'm going to put a really steep angle on them, so they're going to be tucked in right up to that stone, but then coming down at quite a steep angle, which suits the fact that that stone is deep anyway, so they can come down. So just to clarify what I'm doing, there's my ring, there's my stone with this big deep belly. These not sticking out flat because they'll go out too wide. We're going to do them really steep down, so they'll be like that. So that's those tapered baguettes there. Making sense? In their little collets, going to be like that. This is going to be probably standard split bezel, 4 claws. Is that making sense? So I'm just digging through my scrap pot. If I've got any bits I can use without having to do loads of melting down and milling and stuff, saves a load of time. So I've got that flat section. It's a little bit thinner than I would like. This is going to be the like bezel that's going to go around the bottom of the oval stone. I mean, it's fine, but I would prefer to start something a little bit thicker, because you know, like after using your pliers and hammering and stuff, once you've buffed out all the dents and stuff, you lose a bit of thickness. So that's borderline, but I can use it, and it's already got a curve started in as well, because we need to do that as well to get the collet turned up nicely. Did not have any wire I can use for claws, but I'm just thinking round claws, keep it simple for this one. So I can pull those down quite easily for a bit of round wire. And then that was just a bit of backup in case I could start with that and then don't like it for any reason. I've got this, which is a bit thicker, but it's a bit narrower, but I might be able to use it. And then as for making the collets for the tapered baguettes, I'm gonna carve them out of a solid bit of metal. So yesterday I finished the video melting metal in a potato for the first time. Worked really well. I was still a bit surprised at how well it worked. So we can test out that metal a bit further by milling it out and actually making something with it. So that's what that is. So that's going to be my tapered baguettes collets. Okay, so just turn in this. Regular viewers to the channel will know about this. You just turn up your flat section bit of metal into like a rainbow shape, and start from this end. Then before you get to that end, you can go like halfway, 3/4 of the way. Just don't go right to the end. Turn it around and start coming back the other way. Just because it's easier to get a curve on the end when it's the first curve you're doing. Like if I keep curving it, if it's the last bit of curve I'm doing, it's much harder. So that goes that way. Half round section goes towards you. Parallel pliers, that corner, and then that section are like levering points. Sorry, that section and that corner are levering points. So it's touching there, and it's touching there. So that's not got to be tight. It's got to be tight-ish where it can slide on it. Basically, I'm levering it up and then forcing it to follow the curve of my pliers. And you tend to get best results if you move it along the same amount and then tweak it up the same amount. And then how much do you curve it? It's not really a strict rule on that. I would say like the handle of a ring stick, perhaps a little bit tighter, usually works out alright for most things. I actually think learning is more fun if you figure it out yourself. It's slower, it's more work, but it's somehow more satisfying, more enjoyable when you just experiment, you just do it and then you learn that way. You're actually more likely to remember what happens and increase your skill more as well if you're actually doing. Like doing is the learning. Just reading about stuff and trying to understand it, it's not real knowledge, it's something else. There's like it's action plus consciousness is learning. So I'm just looking at my curve now. Well, I sort of look along it and then sometimes you get a little flat spot, so just tweaking it at places where I think it needs tweaking. Now that curve's kind of nice and it straightens out there, so I'm going to grab it right at the end and tighten it up. I mean, this bit of silver is really weedy. This technique works on quite thick, chunky bits of metal. I might do a video specifically on this technique because it's quite physical and some people struggle with it. Another question you might have if you've not done this before is how do you know how long a bit of metal to use? Again, I've never used maths, I've never used measurements. I just look at it and I've done it, I experimented, I learned, and now I just have kind of intuition. I can just look at a bit of metal and think that'll go around that. Just comes from experience, just doing. It's the best way to learn a sort of practical skill. But I suppose we've got the circumference measurements, pi of a circle. This is oval, but you know, you can just basically hold it alongside and just go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's enough. Shaquille O'Neal it. Looking at my stone again, just studying the curvature and imagining my metal being that curve, just to sort of go through it a little bit in my mind. Got my normal size half round pliers. I'll just start turning it up, starting from right at the end if you can. But remember, we are not curving it to go around the outside of the stone, not with this type of set anyway. This one has got stone's got to sit on top of this bezel to a point where the bezel's got to be a size where the stone sits on it nicely and you can't see any of the metalwork when you're looking straight down on it. So it's quite a tight curve. So what I do is, if your half round pliers don't have a small enough curve, these pliers are really useful. Half snipe, half flat. Use these quite a lot. When I'm shaping metal into an oval shape, I think of it as 4 sections. Got a tight curve, flows into a gentle curve, flows into a tight curve, and then another gentle curve opposite. That's just the way I work around it. So I'm just always putting the stone on. See it, the way it disappears around the girdle? Sort of check the curvature. I'm looking straight down on it, I can't see it. So I should have mentioned earlier, I like to put the join where something's going to be joined up to it. So this is a 3 stone, yeah. The oval's going that way, and we've got the collets going on the side. So if you can get the join of your oval collet right in the middle, that's preferable, because the collet for the tapered baguettes is going to go up to that. So then, as you're finishing the jewellery, when like right at the final stages when you're polishing it, you haven't got to worry about a little line showing up for your solder join. I mean, if you do a tight join anyway, they're pretty good for staying invisible, but it's just eliminating any kind of liability further down the line. So I'm approaching getting it finished now. I've put the stone on a bit of blue tack, because it just helps get your fingers out of the way when you're holding it in position and looking down on it and stuff, and hopefully get it to close up into perfectly aligned, nice tight join, a nice even oval, not all wonky or no flat spots, just nice curves all the way around, and then closed up the right size and the right shape. Doing this kind of thing, if you're trying it for the first time, it can be a bit frustrating, because if you haven't got experience of using the hand tools, you might be checking the curvature, you might be able to see and recognise what needs to be done, but if your hands are over tweaking it or squeezing too hard or putting flat spots in it, you're then sort of working backwards. You have to kind of undo that and then try and move forward again. So it feels a little bit like you're going backwards and forwards, which can be frustrating. I'm not going to say it ever gets easy doing this kind of thing. Like, even after years experience, I still have to work really carefully and always constantly check what I'm doing. But I can continuously move forward. Like, I can just see what needs to be done and I'll just do it. So there's no sort of correcting mistakes as I'm proceeding. That's what changes with a bit of skill. And that's something a welder said to me years ago, which sort of made sense to me. What was it? Something like, if you work skillfully, metal can be any shape that you want it to be. But if you're not skillful, metal will be any shape but what you want it to be. Something like that. But that'll make more sense to you once you try this. This is like, you see that? One's up, one's down. I'll show you that, like, proudly show you my dodgy craftsmanship. When you've got a curvature that's slightly off, like my curve wasn't nice and even all the way across. Obviously it sort of was tight and then opened up a little bit. So now I'm turning it up into oval. They don't line up very nicely. Not ideal. That kind of amount I think I'll get away with, but if you've really got to tweak something, you make the side walls of your oval not nice. Like, one side will be a bit flat, or one straight maybe, and then one will be too tapered out. Yeah, really ideal if you get a nice curve. So I need to cut a bit more out. That's got the potential to be a nice oval, but I've got too much length on this section, so I'm going to cut a little section out and then close it up, and I think I'll get a nice oval out of that. And obviously it needs to be the right size. Yeah, perfect. Mine's a little bit big, so I'll cut a little bit out off the end, then close it up again. I think I'll be alright. So I'm going to leave mine like that. The size is good, the join's good, but the shape is not. All this from that top and bottom and all that side fits the stone really nicely, but that's too straight. But because it's only just sort of squeezed together in this position, I'm going to solder it up now, and then when it's like a complete oval ring, I will be able to tweak this flat section out a bit wider. Some of you watching may remember my previous video about putting claws on an oval, and I think even on the title thumbnail for YouTube I put "Watch Me Struggle." I don't like doing ovals, I always struggle with them. But I get them done, I finish them well, but it's never that easy for me. And that's not to say it's impossible for everyone, because everyone I worked with in the past, well, most people, most jewellers with a bit of experience like I had, they didn't seem to struggle with them, but it's something I could never really do. I'm going to use hard solder for this first solder. I think it's a good idea, because we're going to be putting claws on around it afterwards, so we can do those with medium or easy. And yes, I'm squeezing that together with tweezers, which I complained about in the past, but it's holding onto it so gently, I think I'll get away with it. I'm going to pick some tweezers up spare, just in case it drops out, and I'll be able to pick it up out of my skin before it starts a fire. Okay, there you go, soldered it. We got away with it. Yeah, I worry putting silver under heat holding it together with tweezers, it can deform it. Where I worked in London, they had an oval collet punch, but it was just no one used it, because oval collet punches, and I've only ever seen them like this as well, but you may know better than me, they're always like really, I don't know if it's like a mathematically perfect oval or something, but they're quite stretched out. They're really, really oval. And gemstones, oval gemstones, are nearly always quite stubby. So those punches, you never get to use them because they're just too long, too narrow. I think the curve's pretty good. I'm looking at that inner edge against the stone all the way around it. Seems all right. As for getting really, really fitting, you can use your burr phrase and get that stone dropping in really nicely. What am I gonna do now? I'm gonna flatten the top and then get ready to put the claws on, basically. I'll leave the bottom for now because that needs to be shaped up last thing. So yeah, flatten the top. I might as well buzz around the outside, get it nice and neat. Slightly iffy oval. That's a classic Chris Bilton oval that I would get laughed at from other people in the workshop. They're always just off correct. But I'm going to continue with that because that's as good as I can do, and I don't want to waste loads of time trying to get it really perfect. Yeah, if you've got one of these, not an essential thing, but they come in useful. They're actually better for checking, like if you just put claws on normally, mark them out how you think they should be, and then check the accuracy with these. But for actually holding that over this template, you can see that the ovals are really long and stretchy compared to that. Like, no, that's a proper oval. Gemstones are always almost in between the circle and oval. They're never quite like that. Anyway, so yeah, I use this really for checking, but when I've tried in the past to like hold it in position and mark it out, it's never that good. So yeah, sort of handy to have, but certainly not essential. So how do we mark out the claws? I don't know, I can't do ovals very well. So considering we're talking about mathematical shapes, I'm gonna have to ask for your forgiveness for my dodgy drawing. But I seem to remember when I did that video putting the 4 claws on. That's not too bad. I seem to remember realising that inside the oval is a nice rectangle, and then the points of that rectangle is where I'm aiming to put my claws. So look, you put your saw blade over it, you can really see down, cut things in half nicely to aid your imagination. So I'll decide a point where my claw will go, holding this nice and straight, nice and horizontal. I can choose a corner, and then I'm looking at the gap remaining when my saw blade goes over. That can give me a clue to get the other side. So I can position that one with the same amount of gap from that inner edge there. So yeah, as usual, I'm going to be bumbling my way along, getting this collet done, trying to give good instructions. I'm not good at these, so unfortunately for you, no one's making as in-depth how-to video guides or making jewellery as me. So I would like to say check out this channel, that channel, but I don't think you'll find another video where someone's going to go and show you every stage really closely in detail, making an oval collet. I would actually like to see that. I want to see what other people do to get a really good result. But yeah, basically we'll get it done, but bear with me. Anyway, so back to imagining my rectangle inside. I think that's a good spot for a corner. It's quite easy to match that up on the other side. Things I've mentioned in the past is if you put a little thin line or a thin dent or a thin scratch, whatever, first of all, you can then widen it one side or the other to get it really accurate in a good position. But you don't want a really wide one, finish up with something really wide, because that's just no good for actually starting out positioning the claw and stuff. So I quite like where that corner is. Yeah, making sure it's horizontal and my blade is vertical. Go across, line it up over that black dot, checking the gap remaining on this side of the saw blade. Then that gives me a good idea where to put the one below it. What I would do is, as the saw blade is nicely lined up, just gently put a little line on there. So I've got a tiny little scratch. Okay, same again. Go to the long sides. So you've got two scratchy lines. I would advise just any marks you put in, any little scratches or with a marker pen, just do it gently. Do it thin, do it gently, and then if you want to move it slightly, it's no problem to remove it and put it slightly different position. But yeah, just take your time and work your way around it and keep double checking it. Compare each claw to the other three, left side to the right side, top to the bottom, rotate it, turn it around, just constantly test it until you're happy with how it is. I mean, where it's difficult, that it's not a perfect oval, it's handmade. So you may find, you may have worked out really perfectly where the corner should go, but they don't look right still. So you end up adjusting it because your collet is handmade. So you might have one side a little bit more squeezed in the other. By all means, adjust the collet. It's not too late at this stage, but really you should not move on to doing the claws until you're really happy that your collet is the best you can get it. So as we're actually putting the cut in, I'm going to put that over the, looking down on it, I'm going to saw up. There you go. And what I think it might be a good idea, put just that initial nick in all four, then paper off the top, and then you'll be able to see again with a bit more clarity a really accurate marking where your claws are going to go, because there may be a chance you don't like it again. Seeing it as a cut rather than a little black dot, you might think that one needs to move that way, that one needs to move that way. So again, before committing to really putting a deep line down the side, I'm going to put a little nick on all four and then clean the top again and have another look. There you go, look at that, that's not too bad. I took my time, I didn't video much of it because it was just me looking really closely and carefully positioning my saw blade over the top of it. It's alright, it's not perfect, perhaps that one's down a little bit compared to that side. It's close though. It's hard to decide what you think is correct or not, but definitely take your time when you're marking your stuff out. I think I've mentioned this before, when we're splitting open a collet, putting a daylight hole around the middle, you can design it with a marker pen first. Usually going slightly lower looks a bit better. I'm prone to making them a bit too thin. I've recently decided I like them more open, so quite an open gap in the middle, but with more, not directly in the middle, more depth to the top section to the lower section. So we're not necessarily opening it up right down the middle. You can do that, but I find having this bit thicker than the bottom bit, so I'm drawing the hole here, I think that looks a bit nicer. Otherwise, if you've got thinner at the top, thicker at the bottom, doesn't look as nice on a finished collet. I think that looks better. And because we're going to use dividers to scratch around a line around that outside, if you can buff it, if you buff your buff lines up and down it, or even like a paper whizzer going across like that, it helps your divider lines show up easier with less pressure. So just easier. We're going to use them as a guide for cutting out as well, so it's beneficial if you can see the lines clearly. So I may as well buff all this marker pen off. Not going around like that, I'm holding it that way. So I'm going to mark around this now, nice freshly sharpened dividers. I'm saying leave the bottom half thinner, yeah, but be careful because that bottom edge still needs to be filed up. It's going in a ring, so when it's being worn, there's going to be that kind of shape filed out of it for the finger size. So yeah, we're going to lose a little bit. It's not loads, but on the ends, maybe a mil. Need to not go near. That side, hardly anything. Yeah, so bear that in mind. Thinking ahead all the way through the job. Make sure you've got a nice clear line all the way around before you adjust your dividers. obviously using the edge you filed, the top, as the guide, so it's nice and straight. So we are cutting out that middle section now, but only half of it, only from one end, halfway across. And then we're gonna neaten it up best we can, then put the claws on, 2 claws, and then we'll turn it around, then we'll cut out the other half. So that ensures that we, top half, bottom half, never actually really leave each other. If you make it in 2 parts, try and solder them on individually, difficult, very, very difficult to line them up perfectly. This is the best way to do it, I believe. So starting from one end, obviously you don't want to go past that line you use the dividers for, so cutting the inside of it. It's nice if you can get 2 saw cuts going down side by side. Sometimes the distance is just sort of an awkward width where one blade only really goes in the middle, but you need to open it quite a lot both sides, but there's not enough space for two saw cuts side by side. But anyway, let's get a cut in there, and then we've got a few tricks to open it up. And the blade, be careful what angle you're cutting at, because you might be on the line perfectly but holding the saw at that angle. So as soon as you start sawing in, you're going up towards the top. That's no good. You've got to be parallel with that top flat. That's the direction you cut into. So be careful as you rotate it. Always cutting down, especially as you get a bit of depth going. Yeah, what I do is I mark out, I try and saw down the sides a bit. Well, I've got the line, sort of like a groove for my saw blade to sit in as a guide, and then I'll go back to the middle at the end, the sharp end, and then just cut straight into it and try and break through. And then once you've got a little hole there, you just sort of rotate it again and spread that hole around. So broken through now, it sort of becomes quite easy to cut. And that's why I like initially putting a kind of groove in it, and once you've got the hole going, it saws quite quickly, so it helps your blade stay in a good position. And something I've ended up doing just through experience is I don't just cut out a little bit, I cut quite far. I go past halfway, because when you've got 2 claws on here and you've got to cut that way, it's a little bit of a liability. You might accidentally just cut through it and then bang into those claws. So that's more likely to happen if you've got to cut right down and then you're going through right next to that claw. If now at this stage you cut right up towards the other 2, when you break through, it's more friendly to you. You've got more space for the saw to move without actually hitting the claws that are already on there. Okay, show you my work before I move on. See what I mean? Like this happens all the time. It's quite common. Like I've cut just inside that line all the way around, and there's not really enough space next to it to cut without hitting that line. It's just typical for the kind of jewellery I make. So I end up trying to open up the hole down rather than trying to put another cut next to it. But on bigger stones you can do it, but this is common. Don't fret too much. I'll show you how to open them up. Okay, so as for opening up this hole, what I do is you sawed into it that way, yeah? Turn it around, go into it backwards. So we're sawing out away from the end. And then what I'm doing is I'm going up and down, and I'm skimming the side of the blade. Let me open up a bit. I'll concentrate on that end bit to show you. Maybe you can see it happening. See that? It's a good technique. It takes a bit of practice. I remember not being able to do it when I first tried it. Works better on a slightly thinner blades. Cut 3, cut 4. But yeah, you can open stuff up, and then you can also flatten things. You can take little bumps out of things. It's a useful technique, and I do it a lot, especially cleaning up castings. But if you're not getting on with skimming the saw, if you haven't got any thicker saw blades, these work really well, and I would go onto these anyway, even after using my saw blade, because they get it a little bit neater again. Paper discs, talk about them a lot on my channel, use them all the time. The brand, no one ever sponsors me, but I big them up anyway. These are Chemdent. You can buy them in like jewellery tool supply shops. Yeah, come in a box of 100. These are coarse. I do recommend getting the medium ones rather than coarse. They seem to be a nice mix of actually cutting really well and leaving a nice smooth finish. These are a bit too severe. Get it in my hand motor. You've got a nice rough buff stick. The cutting side goes underneath, so I'm holding it like that and just giving a bit of an angle. And that turns the edge of it into like a blade. You look at it from the side, you can literally see it's like gone to a blade. You've got to be careful with these because they do cut really well. As if you're not paying attention, you can make a mistake and put a dip in it accidentally. If you want to make it easy for yourself, if you're practicing, doing it for the first time, just do it in a really big stone. So you've got a nice big gap, cut 2 cuts, and then all your needle files will fit in there. Just try and make it easy for yourself and then do a neat job while it's easy. It gets more difficult, I suppose, when you're working on smaller stones. Looping it with the ×10, I'm not quite up to the line, but sort of there to there is quite good. So if it looks good under ×10, you know it's going to look good to the naked eye. So mine wavers off a little bit as I approach the end, so I'm just going to leave that because I'll wait till I can get my tools in the side and then we'll join it up nicely. But yeah, that's good. And also you might be thinking, I was just talking about having the top thicker than the bottom. It looks better. That's going to be filed straight, remember? So all of this, at least that is coming off. I can't do it looking through the camera screen. At least that is coming off, and then on that side you've got the finger size, so there's going to be a tiny kind of like half shape going in there. So I think when it's finished, that's going to be thinner than the top. So these videos, all I'm teaching really is the techniques and the methods and like my strategy for actually putting together a ring. There'll be other ways of doing it. People do things differently. I just say what works for me, and then I kind of prove it on video. But as for knowing the depths and being able to look at stone and appreciating an angle and what a claw needs to be and how far a claw needs to go in, the thickness of the claw, how far you should cut out the top of the bezel so the stone sits right down, and then knowing how it's going to finish and thickness of your bezels and stuff after, that just comes with experience. That's proper, that's like real knowledge. It's not stuff I can just tell you or write down and you can understand and then you'll know it. It's beyond that. It's actual knowledge from doing it. So yeah, just do it. You'll learn more than I can ever explain, put into words or show on video. Really important to actually do these things. Okay, and we're back. Since my last take, I've been pulling down wire. I decided on this. I didn't have a measurement in mind, but I just kind of knew what I wanted it to kind of look like, and it measures 1 mil exactly. 110 was just a little bit too thick looking, but if you're making one along with this video, it's up to you. You don't have to do exactly what I say. If you want one a little bit thinner, fine. If you want one a little bit thicker, fine. So what we're doing now, I pulled it straight, obviously. I could put a link on the video about that. What we're doing, okay, right, so now we've scooped out half the collet, gone past halfway, neatened it up, top and bottom. Now I'll put a saw cut in it to make it really definite where I'm doing it, and then that saw cut will act as a guide for a cylinder phrase where we will phrase into it and open it up so the wire sits in there. So nice, got the saw cuts in there, ready to go. I just hook that in there. I'm just looking at it again, double checking it. I like them because there's still an opportunity to cut into it, but move it left or right. But I'm reasonably happy with mine. So I just hook it in, going straight down from the top. So that top edge is like thinking of a capital letter T. That top edge is horizontal. My line is vertical from that, 90 degrees. Go straight down. Nice and gently. Try and keep it parallel to the sides. And then if you follow that rule of getting the angle right on all four, when you look underneath it, your little notch that shows on the bottom half now, they should all look in a good position. So you can hold it directly towards you and then see how symmetrical it is. And turn it over and your notches should be in a good position. So next, on the cylinder phrases, I would recommend go for one. I mean, this is only just thinner, but I would recommend going for a very narrow one first of all, just to get it to open up the slot for the claw first of all, and then because these spin, you can find you may accidentally pull it one side or the other, or your angle's a bit wrong. If you do it with a thin one first, you've got opportunity to correct it, and then it still be good for the claw. If you go directly to the claw size, there's no room for error. Like if you tilt it one way, once you straighten it up again, it's now too wide for the claw. So you end up having to fill up gaps with solder, making it badly. So yeah, start with a thin one, I recommend it. I still do it. Like sometimes I feel confident and I'll just go straight to the proper size one, but usually if I'm trying to be a bit careful, or really try and do something well, I'll start with a thin one. And just go straight down from that. Again, being careful to keep it parallel with the sides. Unless you've made it too small, and then that means you need to angle it out, so you'll be cutting more into the bottom. But you know all that from checking your stone on there. Just a little trial run, just looking at the side, just imagining how the claw's going to sit. Do I like the angle? I'm going to put it in a little bit more. It's not sitting quite straight in there. It's being pushed out a little bit, which is good. That means that I'll have to cut a notch in it for the stone to be set, but it's not quite enough yet. So if I just keep it the same angle but go in deeper, should be correct. I will do that, and then I'll do the one next to it. I think it's just more convenient for looking and making sure they're in the same good position, like mirroring each other really well. If there's a claw in there, it looks a bit different. It's just a bit harder to understand what's going on. So yeah, I do actually, I've never used to work like this, but now I do actually recommend cutting grooves, both grooves in first before you do any soldering. Looking at my symmetry, looking down on it, do you like the position of them? Still not totally too late to make a few changes. You could pull it one way or the other, or if you don't like one, or you like where one's sitting, the other one looks wrong slightly, you can pull it about a bit. This is something I do specifically. Other jewellers will do it differently. Like I've seen on other YouTube channels, like big jewellers channels, where they go to put claws on a collet and they'll cut them off individually. Like I hate that. I wanna have a length of wire that I can see is perfectly straight. And if for any reason, like I knock it accidentally or whatever, I can straighten it easily. It's easier to hold onto a long bit of metal and get it straight than it is little short sections. So with the collet facing me, the claw on the outside, put a little bit of solder there. Why is that sticking up a bit high? Oh, is it down? There we go. Get a bit of heat on it. I want to heat it from the other side because I want to draw the solder down and I want to see it flood down both sides of the claw. Sorry, see if I can get that to stay focused on that, which I cannot. Hello? I'm sorry. It's not going to focus. Soldered perfectly, but then I nearly dropped it. You're just going to have to take my word for that. Sorry if that was out of focus. I couldn't look at the screen. Sorry about that. Sometimes my camera works nicely, sometimes it doesn't. So yeah, perhaps a little bit too much solder, look, but it's flooded on there nicely, really strong. I would highly recommend you check in and double check in when you've done both solders, top and bottom. Really make sure they're soldered on really well, not like it's melted but hasn't flooded through. So use your 10 times loop, look all around it, inside there and everything, because once you've got both claws on and they're soldered top and bottom, they're the only things holding these two pieces together once you've cut through that edge. So they're really important, they've got to be proper strong joins. So to save this video going on and on and on for hours like they tend to do, I will go ahead, do that bottom solder and then phrase out the other one, get that second claw on. Maybe I'll show a bit of lining up the claws and stuff. So, 2 solders on the first claw, got 1 solder on the second, just double checking my angles. So I rock it backwards and forwards, get the top nice and parallel, and then you turn it towards you. I can't do it. turn it towards you, and they should be, the claws should be perfectly in line as that hits directly, the side of it hits directly towards you. One claw should be hidden behind the other. The metal block test, obviously that doesn't sit down because of the rounded edge, but you can sort of put it on the endlet. The collet, they should be both flat against the block, and then the collet should be perfectly straight up. In and out of the acid, dividers, freshen up your lines. Progress check, cut the groove. So yeah, just to mention again, because it's quite important, your 4 solders that you've done at this stage have to be really good, because those claws are now the only things holding those sections together. So they're important, they're strong. And be careful with it. If you accidentally bang it, bend it out of position, it's not the end of the world, but it's not great, because you would have been working carefully up to this point to try and keep everything really accurate and nice. So it'd be a shame just to make a clumsy mistake and bang it out of position. So we've got 4 claws on now. So now checking my solder joins, put a bit too much solder on some of them, a bit messy. That claw I'm not liking the look of, although to be honest, it looks really bad to me on the screen. Looking at the screen, looks like it's going in more at the bottom. When I look at it in real life, it doesn't look too bad. I think we've got a bit of an illusion of like 1 eyes, 2 eyes thing going on, like I was talking about in that previous video. Positioning wise, they're not too bad. I'm just never happy with my ovals. Like, I'm always just full of doubt as I work on them. So what I'm going to do is file off the bottoms so they're all flat and nice. That will help it be more clear as their position, whether I like it or not, and then get the claws the right length, the same length as each other at least. Yeah, and then I'll judge the claws more severely, but I think it's okay. And I'm going to go around it with a needle file and rubber wheels and stuff and tidy up my blobby solder joins. So being careful with these delicate silver claws. I think my next full instructional guide, I've got an idea for another 3-stone ring. We'll do it in a totally different way. I might do it in platinum and gold, just because I really need to get onto doing gold and platinum on the channel. Underneath, I'm not filing it right up flat because I've still got that finger shape to go in it, like I mentioned before. So I'm just going to get the bottoms of the claws flat, but I'm not going right up to the bezel. I'm just having a close look at it now, and it's not too bad, I guess. I'm seeing imperfections. I don't like that claw. I think it's a different angle. I think it's pointing at the wrong. It's a wrong angle, going in the wrong direction. But I'm going to leave it. Come on. The actual position of them is not bad. I've just got a dodgy angled one. So now I've flattened the bottoms, I can get them all the same length. So have a look at them. Find your shortest one, which I think is that one. Just using these as dividers. Just put a little nick on them. All the others. It's only a small amount, so I'm just going to paper disc them down. I'm not going to snip it. I think snipping will take too much metal off. Don't do that. Getting hot. Once I go round them all, I try to hit sort of 2 at the same time. Just for tidiness. So there you go, there's my collet. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch with this kind of fine-toothed, sharp-ish needle file. What is it? It's a Glarden, whatever that means. Oh, Velourbe. Swiss made. Cut 2. I'm just going to touch it across my wobbly bits of solder just to start it off, and then I'm going to rubber wheel it. So what I do is freshly sharpen it, line it up, hold it in position. I'm on and off the power all the time. Sort of touch it on and pull it back, but it's really, really light touch, not really putting weight into it at all. Then I'm onto my mini whizzer. Just gently touch it up and down the claws. Concentrate one bit at a time. If I go round it, hitting that claw when that's at an angle preferable to the end, I'm damaging the bottom of the claw, so just doing that bit, and then I'm just doing the claw. And there you go, ready to move on. Ovals, like I told you I struggle, but we get there in the end. Usually kind of good result, but it's hard work. Right, I've got to say thank you to some new patrons. I've got 2 new patrons since my last video. We've got Naoko, Japan in the house. Naoko-san, arigatou gozaimasu. Natawa shinsetsu desu. And then we got Billy Waterworth. Thank you, Billy. Thank you very much, guys, for becoming patrons. Really helping the channel continue and grow into something bigger and better. So I'm enjoying doing the videos, and I'm looking forward to keep working on the channel and growing it into the future. Yeah, if you want to become a patron yourself, I'd really appreciate that. Also, you can become a member of the channel, so look for a join button on the Diamond Matter page, or go to the description, and then I will put links to Patreon in there, so you can follow the link, find out about the perks, and then yeah, like, come on board. Yeah, that's it. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please click like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and see you next time. Thanks. Bye bye.